What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Soft Dump in the Corner podcast, presented by North 6 Sports, episode 37. We have a beauty of an episode for you today, folks. You are going to want to stay tuned right to the end. We are diving deep into what we call the Four Nations Face-Off. And like I said, we're going to talk about the finals here. This has been an awesome tournament, but as of right now, you know what? Let's turn it over to the co-host of this podcast, Mr. Luke Pendabury. What is going on, brother? How are we feeling after the first three games of this tournament? What's going on, brother?
Oh man, it's good to be back. I am excited. It's been a decade, and I know a lot of players have been itching for any best on best tournament. So, having Canada in the U.S. in the finals after the three games that they've been playing, I can't be more excited. Like, this is amazing, and you try not to get political with this whole thing, but I think this game means a little more than just hockey. From what's going on in the world, I'm not going to get into that freaking shit that's going on with the States, but we got a glimpse in a bit of a trial period on the Saturday night game. Sure, it didn't go our way by the end, but let me tell you, probably the best hockey game I've seen in 10 years. So I'm amped. We got Makar back, and I'm excited for another rematch against the States.
Lots to touch up on there. I would like to kind of start at the beginning, go over a few of the first few games, and just kind of really say our kind of thoughts and opinions on where we're at. First and foremost, Canada they started against Sweden. That was an overtime win. My favorite player, Mitch Marner, scored the overtime winner. And you know what? All is great in Canada, right? I mean, you can break it down. What did we think of the lines, and what did we think of the play? Did you break down, or did you criticize any certain areas? What are your thoughts there? But just as a whole, like, you can't really dictate, or I should say, you can't really sort of speak on how you feel a player did in these tournaments with 2 games, 3 games. They get such a short time period to really play together. But just what was your take on not just Sweden, but I guess the first game, second game, and then obviously Finland. But let's kind of dive in more so on U.S. side. But like, what's your take on Canada so far? I guess through the tournament, like how they're meshing. What's your thoughts? Do you like the style? Like, what's your kind of opinion here?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have to kind of like take it easy because these guys have only been skating together for probably less than a week. Like you said, they have 4 games to play if you make the finals. Looking at the statistics on kind of goals and assists, like these guys will take time to get used to where each other are on the ice. This isn't like your 82 game season in the NHL. So when you see guys with like 1 point, 0 points, maybe 2 points, like you got to relax and just hope, they're going to give it their all out there. They're playing for what's on their chest. And kind of seeing the lines with Canada, like for me, this could be just me, but like seeing McKinnon and McDavid together, I truly don't think it's going to work out because they're very similar in kind of wanting the puck and dominating the ice. And when you have two guys that play a similar style, it's almost like kind of like they're going to be fighting for the puck, and who wants to be dominant. But if you split those guys up on 2 lines and you have to shut down one of those lines, like, good luck. And it's just been exciting to kind of see. And same with like the best player in the tournament right now is Sidney Crosby, and I don't think there's anyone who wants it more than Sid. And I'm so excited that like he's playing well and he's showing the young guys this is what it takes to win it all. And yeah, I've been happy with what Cooper's kind of brought to the table. It's unfortunate that we got shut down against the United States, but you look at the other games, all 4 teams in this tournament are so good. So it's not like when Canada comes into this tournament, they're not just going to dominate every game. And when you see players like the likes of, Sasha Barkov on Finland, you got Victor Hedman on Sweden, you have dominant players on every team, and it makes every game exciting. And for me, seeing a Sweden-Finland game, lots of times in the past, I wouldn't even care to watch it, but this hockey's been so good that I've just been I've been tuning into every game. I haven't missed one game, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what's upcoming on Thursday.
Yeah, and it's definitely hitting harder because we haven't seen it for so long, right? Like it's
Yep.
been God knows how many years since we've had some
The
good
World Cup in
best on
2016.
best. Was that?
World Cup
Yes,
2016.
exactly. Yeah, so 2016, right? So I mean, excuse me, coming on 9 and a bit years there, and obviously World
Yeah.
Juniors is a little bit different. The World Championships are different. You don't often get the best players in the world, and sometimes if they
Yep.
do, it's a one-off, here and there. Assuming that that team missed the playoffs or whatever that player wanted to come. But you're very right. Like it's wicked seeing these guys play together. Like it feels like your hot team in shell when you're just making the best line as you can. But in
Yeah.
this instance, you're putting together the best rosters from that particular country, and we're going at it. And
Yep.
it's weird because I had the argument, not argument, even just with you as a whole, just like I just didn't feel like this tournament meant as much. And to explain myself, it's not that I don't think that this tournament means something to the players because it does. I don't think it doesn't mean anything to the league because it absolutely does. I just mean like it's weird for me to pinpoint where on that range, I guess, or where on the scale does this tournament fall from? Okay, here's Stanley Cup. Here's Olympics. Well, you want that 1A or 1B? I don't care which way you flip that as a hockey player's perspective. I'm having a tough time like putting this tournament on the scale of where does it stand, right? So you can say, okay, I've got my World Junior title, I've got my Olympic title, I've got my Stanley Cup, I've got my Four Nations trophy. Now you look back, like where does this tournament fall? That's kind of my biggest argument is I don't know as a hockey fan if I'm looking at the next world championships and thinking I'm never going to see a team North America again. So this tournament's
Mm.
all of a sudden never going to be happening. So that was a one-off. Is the Four Nations going to be a one-off? I mean, do they call it something different because they're going to include more teams now? This is essentially going to be a one-off where it was the Four Nations. And that's where I'm kind of like, is it really going to, or maybe my mindset was, is it going to leave the impact that we truly wanted? Is, as Kachuk touched on, and a lot of these players, was this going to be an all-star game? And that leads me into Saturday evening at the Bell Center of all places, the house of hockey, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Hands up, I'll be the first one to admit it. The Bell Center is the best arena that I've ever been to. It is bumping
I
on a Monday night, a Sunday night, and twice on Tuesdays. It is the best barn that I've ever been in, and it's the best place to hold the Four Nations. I think it's tremendous. They're doing it in the TD Garden at Boston too. Hey, also a great spot. That barn's gonna be
mm-hmm.
rocking, in Boston on Thursday night. But man, that start to that game completely, and I'll speak on behalf of hockey fans a lot, like along in the whole country, man. I was not expecting that. I was in the back fridge getting the drink out of the fridge, expecting the first couple seconds, I'm going to be right back for puck drop. And I hear there's a fight, and I'm like, oh, shut up! There's not a fight in the like you're kidding. Like what are we showing a replay? And yeah, sure enough, I hustle on out, and I'm seeing that, and my mouth's dropping, and like, I'm a kid on Christmas at this point. I'm just jumping. I'm like, I cannot believe that this is happening, right? And
Mm-hmm.
again, much similar to everyone else, okay, wow, okay, everyone's gonna settle in now. Let's play some hockey, right? Nope, boom, another one, right? Same
Taylor
speech,
Tilly.
same speech. 9 seconds in, we get three, and I'm looking around the room, and I'm like, why am I the only one jumping out of my seat right now? Like everyone's like,
Yeah,
wow, this is cool. I'm like, this is like the
this is
craziest
it.
thing that you're gonna see in quite some time. It was unbelievable from that perspective. I didn't think the hockey was that great afterwards, but I really loved the physicality side. That was wicked. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I just chatted super like long about that, and I apologize. But as you can see, I was pretty enthused about that. I thought that was great. I thought it was great for the players because they delivered. Matthew Kachuk said this isn't going to be an all-star game, and he pretty well came out and did that. Now, it was not just Matthew Tkachuk that did this, right? You got to give the onus to everybody. Tkachuk did it. Hagel did it. Brady Tkachuk did it. Who did he fight again? Pardon me. Bennett.
Sam Bennett.
And then what was it? Perico and
Parenko and
JG
Miller.
Miller. Those 6. I'm going to give you guys a clap.
Well done.
On behalf of NHL fans, hockey fans around the world, from United States to Newfoundland. That was wicked, right? So go ahead, give me your thoughts. That's what I felt on that. But just how wicked was that to see, not just from a Canada hockey fan perspective, but just from like, I missed this in the game perspective.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And today I was on Twitter or X, whatever the hell you want to call it. Viewership on the big X. They were showing the viewership numbers, like 10.3 million people watched that game on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's like the most non-Stanley Cup final game the NHL has had for viewership, and you know what?
Which is
I'm not even surprised.
And that's so good for the sport too. And I even wonder too, how many people tuned in like after those happened because of that.
Yeah, I know. So I think you get a lot more on the Monday too. I actually kind of thought, and maybe because it's at the TD Garden, I thought Canada would get the 8 p.m. game, but maybe because it's in the States now and they're giving it to the U.S. Just because, like, the Canada game was more meaningful because Canada needed to win in order to get to the finals, where the U.S.-Sweden game was kind of like Sweden could win, but Canada would have to lose in order for Sweden to get in. But I don't know. Maybe just because it's at TD Garden, the U.S. have the home ice, and they figured that they'd give the primetime spot to them.
Well, they both got a primetime slot, right? Canada technically got two primetime slots, and the USA also got 2 primetime slots.
Maybe that's how they did it.
And so I mean, maybe some of them expected Canada to win, or either win in regulation their first game, and maybe not have had that last game come down to it. Yeah, I didn't think much about the 1 p.m. versus 8 p.m. I didn't mind actually having Canada at 1 p.m. on Family Day, because you're like, okay, I'm getting up, do my thing, and come back home and you're ready for hockey again. And 1 p.m. you're good. And then once the game's done, you're like, back of your head, you're like, okay, I'll probably have the Sweden-US game on in the background, but hockey's done for the day. I got 4 p.m. to the rest of the night to do whatever you want, right? So, I didn't think much of the scheduling. I didn't think it bothered me too much about that. I think that having the 2 8 p.m.ers was fine. And then, the only thing I didn't really like was the 8 p.m. Maybe do 7:30, to be honest with you, because I still think 8 p.m. Or 7:30 p.m. is still 4:30 on the West Coast, which, to be very honest with you, is not terrible. 5 p.m. start on the West Coast is, try and get most people, but you got to think too, like, realistically, you can't appease to everybody. I think you start to tinker with a little bit too, because you got to go, the further east you go, you're going ahead and ahead too. So I didn't necessarily agree with the 8 p.m., but I didn't hate it. It's good point for you to bring that up. I actually didn't really consider it, to be honest with you. So I guess that kind of kind of goes to what I kind of think on that too. What I wanted to bring up, there's a few notes about this before we get into going into the finals again. Excuse me. A few of the cool little points that I touched base on. Did you check the between the whistles at the beginning game, warm-ups, everything? I think it's pretty cool that you're showing those little ticker stats of like their international stats that the players had. So-and-so's had X amount of points in world championship games. So-and-so had X amount of points during their 2 years of world juniors. I love seeing that shit, because for me, it tells me, that player's consistency. But I think even too, if you see a player who kind of maybe is I don't mean it in the wrong way. How do I word this properly? Like, they're a mediocre kind of top sixes, middle-y kind of forward type of player that, gets you 60, 70 points on a good year type of approach, but they come up in big moments type of thing. So, I saw the other night, what was it? Shit, I forgot it. I think it was Kyle Connor or something like that. He was like almost a 1.6 or 1.7 or something like that points per game in world
Wow.
championships or some odd like that. Forget the picture idea, but my point of to this, the concept of what I'm trying to say here was like, I was really kind of thinking and I go, well, what are some of the big performers stats when it comes to those big moments type of thing? And I'm thinking, the Gretzky's, the, Crosby's, whatever, even McDavid, like McDavid and Draisaitl are almost like a point, 1.3, 1.4 points per game in playoffs. Right. And I'm looking and I'm thinking like, I would want someone who scores points in big moments, big games, playoffs,
Yeah.
world championships, world juniors, you name it. And I
Yep.
thought it was really neat. I think that those are kind of really cool things that just to have that. It's a hockey nerd thing. I just kind of love shit like that. But I don't know. I was just kind of
Yeah.
bringing it up to see if you had seen that or kind of noticed that or,
Yeah.
whatever type of thing. But anything on that. But I did want to bring up a thing as well, too. And that is, I'm very happy that the reffing has been a non-factor here. Truthfully, we have not had too much debate, topic, discussion. I listen to a lot of AM talk radio, whether it be on my short drive to work or just on in the background, just as some chat. And normally it's been reffing this, reffing that with the NHL this season. Reffing has thus far, I'm hoping gold medal game the same way, thus far been a non-factor, which is wicked. So kudos to that. I'll let you chat on that too if you got any points on either of those last two.
No, it's really good, and like you said, and the topic of discussion the NHL these days is finding consistency with referees, and whether that's offside or goalie interference, like everything gets so close, and just so much time gets delayed just for looking at like a millimeter of a skate blade over the line, or the goalie gets barely touched, and they're looking into it, and they call it no goal, um, and it gets frustrating because like I think at the point where um, we don't need this in delays. We have enough commercials. We've got enough time in intermissions. I know they're testing longer commercial breaks between whistles and a little shorter intermission breaks. I personally haven't really noticed it, so to me it's just water under the bridge. But I am happy that the refs aren't dictating these games. It's based on player performance, and that's what's been really exciting in this tournament. Just so much energy, like you said, even with the fans, like just listening, even before the guys got on the ice. I was also reading a tweet that the guy got in there like 25 minutes before the game on Saturday, and the tweet said like this guy sat in the seat for 20 minutes staring at the ice because he was just so fired up, ready to go, just so nervous. Like it's just when you have hockey on a national level, it's brings the whole country together, and it's so different from just team to team. And that's what I think is so exciting. Like even our friend group, like we have a Lightning fan, Oiler fan, Capitals fan, Leafs fan. Well, when it's Canada, we're all together, and it's just makes it so exciting.
So couple points there. I wanted to jump onto really quick. So with that point that you made with the reffing, I absolutely agree, and I would even also say too. Did you see was it Wes McCauley? I think it's Wes McCauley. He was one of the refs the
He's
other
been
night.
reffing a bunch of
Did you
games,
see
so
the
probably.
video of Kachuk, Brady Kachuk, when he was like, hey, what'd you think of that? Hey, Wes, like when he went up to the ref and he was just like, oh, fuck, like that was mint. That was wild. The refs were so fired up, and you could see that they were like equally involved with the energy of the game. I thought that was amazing. They ref that
cool.
game like it was a playoff game, and that to me was the best thing about that, because they had ref probably 3 or 4 games between the other two countries previous, and you got to think like that pace, that energy, that anger or built up aggression, if you will, what wasn't there in the other games that they'd refed. So this was a complete 180, because not only did it take like no time to get into the game for that to happen, it wasn't like a dirty hit happened or a big hit or something antagonized the event. This shit was like, ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening. And then it was like puck drop, boom, boom, boom. And I'm just like, we're fucking in this right now. And the refs just took that and they just nurtured that and built that. And I thought the
Yep.
refs did an amazing job at letting that energy and that pace and the hitting and aggression and while also noting keeping it tame. I thought the refs did such a good job at letting that game play out and just naturally occur. Nobody went too far. Nobody was taking dirty, cheap shots. People were taking some good runs. Kachuk absolutely
On Doughty.
dummied Doughty in the corner. Very clean hit. Very clean hit. I'd be sure
clean.
Doughty would come up and he'd say it was a clean hit. He made a great play. He got the puck out. Obviously there's a history with Doughty and the Kachucks. Matthew, obviously not so much Brady, but certainly with Matthew, but a phenomenal hit. I mean, you could sit, there were 10, 15 big hits. Normally there's not even 10, 15 rub outs in an NHL game, right? So again, full circle, I'm spitballing, I'm energetic right now, but the refs did such a wicked job at just keeping that game tame, but just like, boys, let's keep this energy up. This is fantastic hockey. You're putting on an amazing show for the crowd, for the 10.3 million people in the world that are watching this event right now, let alone the other people that are going to be watching highlights and seeing this. I think they recognize what was going on, and they did a fantastic job at, like I said, keeping that moment a moment, keeping it in the moment, right? So kudos to the refs. And you pointed it out too, the energy of the crowd was amazing. That was one of my points here in one of my notes. So like, yeah, awesome to bring that up too. The fans have been amazing. I think that Thursday night is just gonna be a raucous of a crowd. It's gonna be the playoff atmosphere, which is fantastic. It's great for the players because they'll be amped up. It's great for the game because they're going to get views. They're already guaranteed, in my opinion, 10.3 million views right now to start. You know that there's going to be more people watching because they're expecting it now. So that's awesome. I think it's tremendous. And so kudos to the NHL. Kudos to the players, man, honestly, for doing that. They didn't have to. So I'm really glad that that I was wrong and that a lot of other people were wrong. I didn't necessarily think that it would be an all-star game, but I certainly didn't expect fighting. I had to look up in the rules. Is fighting legal in the Four Nations face-off? Like, I'm sitting there talking to my friends and I'm like, hey, like, are they getting kicked out right now? Like, is it double IHF? Is it international? And then I said, I'm like, it's an NHL sanctioned event. So like, I would imagine that fighting's good. They go to the box, answered, questions answered, blah, blah, blah. But, anyways, moving on, unless there was anything else you wanted to add on that type of thing.
No, honestly,
kudos to the refs, man. They've been awesome. Fans have been awesome. And I will say, I think the NHL is looking good. I don't necessarily know if I can entirely give them the credit. If it would have been no USA Canada game and it would have just been the first like 5 or 6 games that happened in the tournament, nobody would have ever talked about it again.
I do got one thing to add though, and maybe just because of the popularity of this event, I'll be honest with you, until I was on social media last night, I had not one fucking clue the NBA All-Star game was on.
Yeah,
not a clue.
No, I didn't either. And that's a great point too, because that's generally a pretty big event, right? Because they have the charity games, all the skills comp is different, of course. But yeah, no, that's a really good point. Which, by the way, I will just give myself a quick little shout out. I tossed a quick 5-banger before the All-Star game. Didn't even look at the rosters. Didn't even know who I was betting on. $5 on Team Shaq, baby. Give me that $11.25 payout. Give me that $6, baby. Can't even buy a $5 footlong anymore with that $6. But yes, you are 100% right, man. That's a really good point that at least in Canada specifically,
Fair.
at least specifically in Canada, the NHL and the Four Nations face-off absolutely overwhelmed the discussions of even the All-Star game, because you're correct. They would, even just on sports talk radios, medias, whatever, normally just be looking for some content at this time of year, and they'd be going
Yeah.
balls to the wall on it. So that's a really good point. Yeah, no, absolutely. That it did a good job at covering the basis of the ESPNs and TNTs of the world. I'm sure they were talking about it on their big American sports channels too, right?
Yeah.
I want to switch over to before we go over the actual final game. I do want
Yeah.
to, and we'll circle back to that. I wanted to just bring up a really cool point that I was thinking of, and obviously, there's no, the rumors are out there with Crosby, having another down year. Not Crosby particularly, excuse me. The team having a poor year, and
Pittsburgh.
Crosby sort of sitting there withering away again for another season. Like, we need this guy in the playoffs, and that leads me to ask, right? Like, this is a good audition for players to find chemistry right now with other star players. And I'm thinking, like, there's always GMs out there that are looking to make big splashes, right? Vegas year after year. Minnesota, even the last couple of years, Bill Guerin's been making a few, big splashes. There's a few teams this year that have either taken a step ahead, maybe like Washington has taken a step ahead, I think, or at least kind of surprise people, if you will, for that. A few other teams, I'm sure you go down the list in a positive or negative way. My question is, with the way that the NHL is setting up for the next few seasons in particular, now that we know the cap is changing significantly, albeit within the next year, 2 years, even 3 years, a big jump. Are we thinking too far ahead, expecting there to be more star player movement like there is in other leagues? This is a good way to showcase it. Not many leagues do have a true competitive best on best, other than the Olympics, other than the World Basketball Championships, whatever. There's not too much best on best in football. There really isn't. Baseball, of course, there is with the yearly, the yearly baseball, World Baseball
All-Star game
Championships and
or the
stuff.
World
But,
Baseball Championship?
my point being here is, like, hockey has never really been a star. Like, it's been a very loyal to the team, loyal to the franchise, loyal to the ownership sport. And therefore, you haven't seen many big trades, right? Just look ahead, look at what happened. I guess this is, just moving back to our last pod, but Mikko Rantanen, like, that guy's a huge name in the NHL. That guy's name he got traded, right? Go look
Yep.
at basketball, right? Luka Doncic just got traded for Anthony Davis. A 3-team deal, with Utah taking on some money and some picks, whatever. Luka Doncic, that's like trading Nikita Kucherov or Matthews or
Yeah.
call it
Big names.
Draisaitl or McDavid if you really rank McKinnon and Crosby and or Makar or whoever in front of McKinnon and McDavid, Draisaitl. Sure, go ahead. That's a huge trade. McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, that's a huge trade. I mean, I'm wondering if you're looking at a lot of these GMs right now saying, you know what? Maybe me giving up that extra first rounder, that prospect included into the trade, call me crazy, but I might be Sonny Weaver in this shit at the trade deadline, going full draft day. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you just don't know. And again, I'm blabbing tonight. That game the other night got me
We're all fired
going a
up, buddy.
bit, but it's a good audition for players. Like, what's your take? Do you think that there's going to be bigger trades coming in? There's a lot of really talented players who are signed to long-term deals, call it 3-4 years, 5-6 year deals left, that could very well look at the situations and say, well, shit, I mean, with all this movement, maybe I can have a chance at winning elsewhere, right? Do you think
Yeah.
Crosby has a chance to be moved? Is there anybody else that you think has a good chance? And if you were to just throw a blind dart just to simply say, hey, I'd love this guy on my team, if you want to even just put him on the bolt, go for it. Who is it? So if you want to answer those three, kind of take a whack at that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm just gonna backtrack just a bit when you're talking about the NBA. The NBA stole those 3 days because there was Luca for AD, then you had De'Aaron Fox getting
Yep,
traded
yep. That's also
to the
the
Spurs, and
Spurs.
then you
Yeah,
had Jimmy Butler going to the
yep.
Warriors. Like there was just so much going on, and that was my whole social media feed was just basketball and what other moves can be made.
Hmm.
And you made a really good point with the salary caps going up in the NHL, and that's just a green light to be like, if I'm a GM right now in a win now situation, I should be making a big move and booster my team to give it the best chance possible to win a cup. And to what you're saying about Crosby, I think, yeah, it'd be great to have him on the Lightning. The goddamn like the leadership he brings, and he still plays at a high level. Like look at him, Canada. Canada has all their best players that you can think of, and Crosby's the oldest in the tournament, and he's still showing the younglings around. Like he's like this. I'm still the guy, and the only possible way, because he must have a no move clause. So at this point, the only place I could really see is Colorado,
Hmm. Hmm.
and he fits there, and he plays well with Nate, and he's really close with Nate as well. Um, I don't know where else he would really fit. Like maybe as much as it makes me want to vomit, but maybe Boston. Play with Marchand. They need a strong centerman. They've got Elias Lindholm and Pavel Zacha, but you had Crosby to play with Marchand. That could be good too, but you got to put Crosby on a team that I think that is in a win now situation just to give him an opportunity to win. But he, as a teenager, he grew up with Lemieux. Followed in his footsteps. He was a good role model for Crosby, and you look at Lemieux, he didn't even leave Pittsburgh. So I really think Sid's retiring as a Penguin, as much as people think that maybe the last few years he's just going to rot in the organization. But
I do too.
he's going to be with Pittsburgh, and they're going to retire 87
Yeah.
across. They might across the league, maybe.
You know what though? I mean, he could get traded today or whatever, and if he retired at the end of this season or played another year with another team, he would still get his number retired, and he would still be an all-time great in Pittsburgh
Yeah,
and an all-time great in the
yeah.
NHL. I don't think that is going to change. I think his number's already in the rafters with Pittsburgh.
Oh
So
yeah, probably a statue too.
I mean, he's got 3 cups. You got to. That's that's pretty cool. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, dude, like I said, it's is there somebody else that other than Sid that you would love on your team?
That would fit the Lightning really
Not even
good.
just lightning, not even lightning, but just a player that
Just in
if you were to
general.
build a team, like what kind of style player that you would feel is a great fit, not necessarily the sexiest pick, but just anybody as a whole.
I mean, you look across the league. There's a lot of guys, a lot of young talent, and a lot of guys you could build around. It starts from the back end for me, and you have to look at either a goalie like someone like Connor Hellebuck or Vasilevsky, or even to the point you look at a defenseman like Kale McCarr. That guy's a generational talent for a defenseman. We haven't seen that in I don't know how many years. But if you want to build a franchise around certain players, I would probably start as much as people are like, oh, it should be McDavid or McKinnon. I'm going to think a little outside the box, not saying a ton, but I would say probably Kale McCarr or a really solid tendy that can back you up and win games for you in tight moments.
Yeah, yeah, and again, I don't disagree by any means. It would certainly
Yeah.
be, or he would certainly be, probably my number one if I had to. Just
Yeah.
looking around though, just and again, not that you took that in the wrong way, but just I want you to think of it a different way, like not a sexy pick. So like one of my players that I really like that I think stands out incredibly well, which I know you'll like the answer, and he's one of my favorite players in the league, is Braden Point. I
Oh, yeah.
just he is an absolute
He's a dog.
winner, and I just the simple things. Um, and to me, I screamed it at day one. I've been preaching it for forever. I wanted McDavid to get a chance with Point, but I knew that Cooper would want Point in a center position, And then you also look at the factor of, okay, he's not playing on center 1. He's not centering line 2 because he's not out playing Crosby or McKinnon. Now all of a sudden you got Braden Point as a third line center, which that's
Yeah,
ridiculous talent. But
he's not
he's the
used to
kind
it.
of player that if you just let him roll and give him that 20 or close to 20-ish minutes a roll, and play him with the talented players, he is like one of the most underrated point producers, but just he gets so many high danger chances while doing
Yep.
a lot of the little things right. You saw him
Yep.
go play with McDavid the other night, and it was just ridiculous chemistry right away. I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, that is what you get. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of
Yep.
players that can do it. I'm not just simply saying that just to toot my own horn. He's just, to me, I like watching what he can do. He's a smart player off the puck. I think
Yeah.
McDavid does extremely well with players who are better without the puck than they are with the puck. That is why
Yep.
Zach Hyman does so well with McDavid. That is
Yeah.
why Chris Kunitz made a bunch of money thanks to Sidney Crosby, because
An
Crosby
Olympic gold.
loved playing with Kunitz because he knew that Kunitz could go and get the puck. Kunitz always had his stick on the ice, and Kunitz knew
Yep.
where to find space to create
Yep.
chances. Fast forward 10 some odd plus years, and you look at what Hyman's doing with McDavid. You can go around the league and pick a bunch of guys. I'm sure that, Chris Kreider was infamous in that role for the last arguably 10 some odd years with, maybe not 10 years, but 5+ some odd years with the Rangers. There's a lot of really dynamic power forwards, right? Lucic for some odd, all those years. So, it's interesting when you look at that perspective, but, yeah, I kind of lost a little bit of my train of thought. If I'm being very honest with you, I got kind of out of the
It's all
way
good.
with the example train. But
Yeah.
regardless of which, I wanted to just kind of briefly finalize up on that chemistry sort of thing there. I would be surprised for sure to see some more star player movement, but I would really like to see it. I think it would be good for the game,
Yeah.
assuming it's not necessarily the player wanting out first. If it's the player wanting out first, that's a little bit different. If they're like, I don't like my, if it's the whole Vancouver thing with JT Miller and Patterson, I'm not crazy huge on. If it's just a Rantanen thing and the GM and then whatever, they need to do it. They feel that they don't want to pay the guy or whatever it be, hockey reasons. I love that. I'm all for it. It sucks when you think of from a human perspective. It really,
Yeah.
really sucks. But from a fan's perspective and from a cheering from your team's perspective, if something like that happens, if you bring in a big player or you get a big trade or whatever, like it's exciting, man. So I kind of hope it does happen, right? I really do. I'm gonna just kind of throw it out there right now. Do not forget about the Minnesota Wild. The reason I always bring up the Minnesota Wild, and you probably already know where I'm going with this because I say it all the time. They have $14 million in dead cap space right now because of Zach Parise and Ryan Suter buyouts. After
Yep.
this season, that drops from 14.743 million down to 1.66. They are opening up $13 million just in cap space, plus the additional cap space of the cap going up next year. They're going to have almost
Yeah.
20
They're looking
freaking
good.
million dollars to spend next season. They have Kaprizov signed for the next 2 years, Matt Boldy on contract for the next 4 years, Erickson, Zuccarello. They have their entire top six. Plus, they have Spurgeon, Brodeen, Middleton signed with Faber signed as well. Philip Gustafson in net this year as a Vezina candidate. Do I need to continue? Bill Guerin as your GM, not afraid to make any changes at all. John Hines does a tremendous job with that team. Fuck. Just saying. Just saying, if you're looking for a futures bet next season, just saying, I think the Minnesota Wild could be a little cheeky play. Cheeky play. I
Wow.
digress. This is a Four Nations tournament podcast supposed to be, and we have a final. this Thursday, folks. This is going to be awesome. So, as we've talked about, Canada versus USA rematch. The States won 3-1 with an empty netter, albeit in the first game. It was pretty well tooth and nail the entire game. Do I think the USA deserved to win that game? Absolutely. USA, in my opinion, controlled not the entire game, I would argue, but they deserve to win in just about every category there was. Canadian players came out and admitted the same thing. So if you think I'm talking smoke, go and listen to their interviews. I don't think I'm wrong. I do think Canada deserved to lose that game. Do I think they can win on Thursday? Of course I do. They have a ridiculous amount of talent. There were a lot of players that had a poor game, and I really do believe that they were a bit thrown off by the way the States came out and did that. I think it took a lot of balls for Hagel to make that first play and say, yeah, I'll fight you for sure. No problem. My adrenaline's through the roof. I'm going you. I'm not saying no. And then, of course, Bennett never going to turn down a fight. And I thought all three fights, everybody held their own extremely well. Thankfully, nobody got injured out of those, at least of what we know. And that was wicked. But I do think Canada has a chance. There's a rematch. Let's talk about that. First game didn't disappoint. I don't think this game's going to disappoint either. I'm expecting more goals. I think there's going to be more nerves to follow with this one. I do not think that I think Binnington's due for a couple squeakers like he had. I don't necessarily want to call them squeakers, but certainly shots that I think Binnington would have liked back. But I do believe too, I'm a big fan of trends and believing in things happen and they consistently happen. And Hellebuck is known to let in a few questionable goals when it comes to big moments. If you have an argument, please say so. But the numbers have just shown that that's what's going to happen. Could Hellebuck come out and put up a shutout with 55 saves on Thursday? Yeah. Will I be surprised? Maybe a little bit with 55 saves, but my point being is, would I be surprised if he had a shutout? And no, I wouldn't be. Like, he's the best goalie in the NHL. There's no doubt about it. But look at the big points. Let's go back to the international stat tracker and show me Connor Hellebuck in big game moments, what his stats are. Go look at what he did in the last 2 years against the Avalanche in the first rounds or whatever it came to be. Good snag on the old Yeti ball there.
That?
For those listening on the audio form, that was a mic drop. Not on my behalf. So Hellebuck hasn't necessarily been that star Vezina candidate when the big games come. So my point being, don't be surprised if he has a shutout, and don't be surprised if he gets lit up. So I'm guessing he lets in like 3, roughly. So I want to kind of talk about the sort of the X factors, right? Like, what's the make or break? What's the difference makers? What do you think is going to be what do you think? I've got a few. Add a few, please, if you have something or have thought about something differently. 1, 2, 3. I have 5 things, 5 key points that I think are going to come down to who's going to win. Okay, first and foremost, who wins the special teams, the third line / shutdown roles. Okay, goaltending. I'm doing a little Patty Mahomes here right now for everyone who can't see, calling everyone into the huddle with my fingers. Coaching and experience. Okay. Add anything you want to those. I'll let you go first off of those if you want. What are your X factors based on those? By all means, shits and gigs, throw something different out there, whatever. But special teams, the third line roles, goaltending, coaching, experience. Talk about a few of those X factors and kind of what you feel is going to be a difference maker in the game Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, before we even get into those, a lot of information circling the web today about Charlie McAvoy. Obviously, we all really hope he does well, and he was admitted to the hospital with an infection, and he is actually ruled out for Thursday's game against Canada. So then all the talks about his replacement in Quinn Hughes, I'm like, I mean, you can't get a better replacement than that. Let's be honest. So if he's in the lineup, then we're in for a good match. But again, hopefully everything goes well with him. And we also saw a lot of injuries, whether it's more precautionary in that last game against Sweden, where Matthews didn't play. Both Kachuk brothers left the game. Trocheck went down the tunnel. I feel like a lot of it was probably smaller injuries, or you know what, they're getting a little banged up. Let's hold them out. We're in the finals, so we might as well rest our big guys and go for it. Like Matthew Kachuk, like I don't think anything gets worse than a broken sternum, and he was playing in the Stanley Cup Finals a few years ago. So that guy's going to be in the lineup regardless of his injury.
If he wants to be, he'll be.
Yeah, 100%. X factors. Yeah, special teams. Canada's power play is going to be huge. They have looked good, especially since the beginning. They clicked right away. I mean, you had like four superstars probably on that line. So they just got to move the puck well, see where each other are. But it's very important that they can get that clicking right away. If they can get an opportunity early in that game, hopefully they can find one past Hellebuck and get going early. So
Yeah, and even too, just to double check, I wanted to double check. They were 0 for 2 against the States. I wanted to quickly say, but I
yeah,
didn't know if I was wrong. But yeah, I was going to say they didn't
yeah,
score a goal in the power play. I don't think they really
yeah.
generated shit on the power play. The U.S. had a terrific game plan, and I think they did a
US looked
fantastic
good.
job
Yeah,
at shutting down that kind of north-south sort of McDavid kind of style-esque power play. So yeah, I
yeah.
agree 100%. Power play needs to step it up for sure.
Yeah, and we can match line for line in the top
Yeah.
six. Not saying that it's equal, but you're getting the absolute best talent from both sides, and it's going to come down to the bottom six on what they can produce. We got young guys like Sam Bennett and Konechny. If these guys can just start motoring and being physical, throwing the body, get the guys out of place.
Yeah.
These guys are going to matter big time in such a meaningful game.
Mhm.
I know you said that it's gonna be high scoring. I actually think it's gonna be the complete opposite. I think no one wants to make a mistake out there. I actually think it's gonna be like a 2-1 game. It's gonna be very little. It depends on goaltending. I mean, you got Bennington and Hellebuck. Depends on what kind of version of each goalie you're gonna get from these guys, but it's important that these guys don't make mistakes out there because this game's going to matter a lot. And I think I heard it from 2 or 3 guys that in the interview saying this might be the biggest game they've ever played in their lives.
Yeah.
So this means a lot to them, and yeah, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be electric out there. I wonder how the booing's gonna go with the anthems. I personally don't like that. It's just I understand what's going on in the world, but it has nothing to do with the players on the ice. I understand it's the country, but let's just show a little respect, I think, on both sides. You know what's going to happen to Canada. They're going to get booed. So it is what it is. Monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah, I gotcha. So yeah, I agree with a lot of those. I do think special teams is going to be kind of my number one most important. You're going to take a penalty or two. You've got to be better than them on the PK.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
if you draw 50-50, you're okay if you take two, but if you can put up a 0 for them on the PK, that's the biggest thing, because I want to say with the skill that Canada has on the power play, excuse me, I would argue it's better than the USA's power play. And truthfully, I think they have a lot more of kind of an approach to it. I think it's a little bit different from USA's perspective versus Canada's, just because they have so many unique weapons. So power play, I
Yeah.
think Canada needs to at least get a power play goal, hopefully on their first one, because that you don't want it kind of starting to creep in that they can't score.
Yeah. Yep.
And then, yeah, like I said, third line shutdown rules, that's always huge. I think Sam Bennett's guaranteed to get back in the lineup. I think after the USA's first game with Canada, I don't believe they make many changes. I can't see Seth Jarvis coming into the lineup for anybody in particular, unless Cooper just wants a different element. Maybe he wants one extra righty in the lineup. Maybe he wants to put somebody
Yeah.
else in a special teams position. I don't know. I also have
Yeah.
goaltending, like we touched on earlier. What's Hellebuck gonna do? I don't think the question mark. I think everybody, in my opinion, is actually looking at goaltending all wrong in this one. I think the obvious thing would be to point fingers at Bennington, or maybe Aiden Hill gets a start, and a lot of people are going to point fingers in that. I truly do believe the bigger goaltender that we need to focus on is Hellebuck in this situation, and how does he play?
Yep.
Coaching is a big thing here. Obviously, John Cooper's a multi-Stanley Cup winner. I don't mean it so much as that, but I do believe, am I correct that USA is home ice here?
Yep.
All right, so they'll have last change, which is a massive in this style of play. When you have such an advantage on like putting this caliber of player in those positions, getting your best forward scout on the ice in the offensive zone, getting your best face-off guy in multiple situations. I mean, having last change goes an awful long way. It also alleviates it a little bit from John Cooper's perspective when he can look down and be like, my worst defenseman plays 26 minutes a night in the show. I'm okay. And the US has the
Yeah.
same thing. Don't get me wrong.
They're
They
similar.
both have
Yep.
that. So coaching on the last change perspective is key, but it is going to be interesting who gets the matchups. With such little time as a coach to analyze and look, they need to make sure they're right. They have very few,
Um.
or very little time to get it right. So that's huge. And then just experience alone. A lot of cup winners on Canada's side of things. I should have done the math, Frig. I wish I looked on how many cups Team Canada's won versus US. I'm sure we can
Oh,
look.
it's crazy. It's fucking crazy. Apparently,
Okay, so
I don't know the number. I don't know the number, but I did hear it the other day, and I was like, "Whoa."
yeah, I wish I would have looked up the number, but I was
Yeah.
thinking about it today, and that was one of the things that I did bring up in my mind was like, there are a lot of cup winners. Like if you go down the list on Canada, that I think is going to draw on big experience here. I really do. I think being punched in the mouth, no pun intended, is really going to be good for them, man. Facing adversity early in the tournament or at the right time is huge. It's like any team that makes the final push for the playoffs in the NHL season when something happens late January, late February, whatever, and they have that push. I think getting slapped in the face at the right time is so important. And I think Canada's going
Oh
to
yeah.
come in pissed off, and they're going to be just as equal, if not more, than USA's level. I'm hoping on Thursday. So, if there's anything else on that one that you wanted to kind of pop off on,
Yeah,
yeah.
I got one thing, and it's a stupid statistic, and I think I heard it from, I think Biz tweeted it, which is kind of funny, but he said that the team who's had the home dressing room in this tournament has gone 0-6. No one's won in the home dressing room.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, the good thing is Canada won't be in the home
Yeah.
dressing room either.
Yeah.
Hedman said that Canada was going to win too, so that means they're definitely going to win.
Apparently a virus went through the Sweden locker room. A lot of those guys were hurting big time.
Yeah, well, it hit McCarr too,
Tough. Yep.
right? So yeah, I wouldn't have doubted at all, right? They all share the same facilities. They're all in the same vicinity. They
Yep.
Some of them are friends. Some of them play on the same team.
Yep.
Some of those guys probably chatted, hung out, went to dinner, whatever. You got to think
Yep.
Marner, Matthews, and Nylander probably saw each other at one point, right?
Yeah.
Anyways,
100%.
let's wrap this up. Good timing on that episode tonight. I thought
Yeah.
covering those notes on the Four Nations was pretty key. I wanted to get those in. You know how we got to end the podcast, though. We need a Four Nations face-offs finals prediction. Luke
Yeah.
Pendlebury, what is your prediction?
I think I kind of teased it earlier in the episode, but I have a 2-1 OT winner, and there's no one else than Crosby that's gonna get it.
Okay. Bucci overtime. Crosby and
The kid.
I said Bucci overtime. Crosby for Canada and who for US in the overtime?
Oh, hopefully nobody. But one second. Um, uh, who? I'll say. I'll say Matthew Kachuk.
Matthew Tkachuk. All right. My prediction. I'm gonna change it just a sliver. I am going to say Canada wins 4-3 in overtime as well. So I originally had 3-2, but I'm gonna go 4-3 in overtime. I think the States tie it super late. 20,
just like the Olympics.
22 seconds left. They tie it up. Kyle Connor's going to tie it up. And I think Braden Point scores the overtime winner. In overtime, 4-3, Canada wins. But Bucci overtime, you know how it goes. Canada, Braden Point, USA, Kyle Connor for his hat trick.
Oh.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's out on a limb. Let's hope that doesn't happen. If it goes to overtime and Canada loses, we'll be a little bit butthurt, but we'll both look at that and say, what a wicked tournament. What a wicked time.
Next year.
And that was very good for the league, right? That's what we want here, right? We want eyes on the league and we want attention. And that's what they're doing. And they're doing a very good job with that. So, without further ado, let's wrap that one up. Episode 37, that's a fun one. Four Nations face-off. We have a Rumble in the Jungle Thursday night at TD Garden in Boston, down in Boston. Like I said, thank you very much for listening. As always, presented to you by North 6 Sports, another edition of the Soft Dump in the Corner podcast. Have yourselves a wonderful day, night, or evening.
Woo!